sometimes you're going to have to really fight for it. You have to make sacrifices. But if this means that much to you, you're in control.
I remember standing up on that stage and there were these Silicon Slopes businessmen and they were coming up to me and like talking about the next steps as if I was like one of them.
Wait, 1,800?
Over 1,800.
Wow.
Yeah, people were commenting like crazy. It was great feedback.
You identified a pain. You found in the business of like event venues that they were really struggling to get people in. Hello, welcome everyone. Today I have with me my guest, Brenna Wilkinson-Johnson. Thank you for coming today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Jacob. Thanks.
I am really excited to talk to you. I remember you came last year to Corbin Church's class at BYU, and you presented your business. So I got a little like sneak peek of your business there. And so it'll be fun to kind of do an interview where I can follow up and see how much your business has grown, how many changes you've made, if you made any pivots. But first, I'd love to talk and learn kind of your origin story. Like, where did you come from and why are you an entrepreneur now?
Yeah, so my dad and my mom's a Southern girl. My dad met her, they got married, and he opened an accounting firm in Salt Lake. And so I grew up in northern Utah. And so I guess he was an entrepreneur because he started his own accounting firm. And so I kind of saw the ins and outs of that. It's long hours. I think he worked more hours than any of my friends' dads. But he also was there at every sporting event for my brothers and I and every music thing. You know, so he had that flexibility. If he came, that may mean that he'd be working late. But I really appreciated that. And I don't think I knew a lot different just because that's how I was raised.
I think it's interesting how many different facets there are to entrepreneurship. Like you have like fundraising and starting a big business, or you have like a sole proprietorship and doing like your own restaurant kind of thing. It's cool how there's different aspects of that. So how did that transfer to you starting your business? You have a business called Yedding, right? How'd you get from there to where you are now?
Yeah, I've always been very entrepreneurial. And it's interesting to see like how much is nature versus nurture. Surely my dad influenced me, but I also think I just like was very, very much was naturally. And so, you know, I did the like lemonade stands and the snow cone machines and the, you know, I remember walking one day and I saw someone in their front yard was selling pumpkins and I was like, I think I could make those look cute and sell them for more money. And so I like bought a bunch of their pumpkins and I painted them and, you know, made some money off of it. And so I was constantly brainstorming ways to save up a few bucks, you know, and then that, you know, got to high school. I was doing sports. I played tennis and then I was highly involved in choir and stuff in addition to school. And my parents made it a requirement that I hold a job as well. And I didn't know how I would hold a job with the way that my schedule was. And so I thought, well, I've played piano for years. I have, you know, some national accreditation for it. I'll go ahead and I'll teach piano. And so I got in about 15 students and I could schedule them in the gaps of my schedule and I loved it. And so that was what I'd say like my first little business gave me kind of experience as far as scheduling and working with you know, customers, working with, you know, the students' parents and things like that.
That's really cool. I actually used to be a piano teacher as well.
Did you really?
Yeah, when I moved out here to Provo, I was like, how can I make extra money? Like I had a job, but I was like, I love piano. Let's see what can happen. So it's cool that you also did that too.
Yeah.
Man, so when did you get started with Yedding?
So I got started with Yedding almost 3.5 years ago. Well, before that, actually. I was in the Marriott School. There were 4 other guys. We started brainstorming business ideas. And we had heard from a bunch of friends about how difficult it was planning a wedding, mostly about how expensive venues were. And so we started talking about this. And I had remembered that my parents had, and a couple of their friends had like hosted receptions in their yards. And they had put forth effort in order to make the yard look beautiful. And they said, while it looks like this, we wish we could host 3 or 4. So we kind of started tossing around the idea, in addition to other ideas, of a platform that's like Airbnb, but for wedding venues. So we entered it into a competition at BYU. I think we were more shocked than anyone when we tied for second out of 42 teams.
Well done.
Thank you. They loved the idea. I remember I was going through a really tough time personally with some family issues. And I remember standing up on that stage, and there were these Silicon Slopes businessmen, and they were coming up to me and like talking about the next steps, and as if I was like one of them. And I remember how good that felt. And I was like, like the kind of potential that they're showing in me, like I want other people to feel that way. That was a huge caveat. I took some time off, and I went and I served a mission trip for my church. And that was a huge motivator, actually, as interesting as it sounds, to like making that decision. Because, I feel like when God like called me on a mission, he also showed a huge amount of like belief and potential. It's like he saw my potential there, and it meant so much. And I wanted other people to feel that way. So I went on my mission trip. I came home, and the other guys had all kind of been doing their own thing and graduated, and one was like at Stanford or something for computer science. And so I thought, well, I think that this could be more lucrative than ever, and so more successful than ever. And so I started doing a little bit of validation. Then I just stood up in front of one of my classes one day, and I said, here's my idea. Who wants to do it with me? And I had like 4 people who were like, yeah, I'm in, and talked with me a little bit more about it. So we started work on it again.
That's really
cool. That was 3.5 years ago.
Man, there's 2 things I really like that you just shared. I think it's really cool how you identified a pain, right? You found in the business of like event venues that they were really struggling to get people in. And then you started going out and testing that idea. It's really, really cool that you went through that process and you found something that seems to be working really well. And the second thing is something that I love the most about entrepreneurship. It relates to the idea of like fulfilling your potential. Like that experience that you had at your entrepreneurial like contest with those investors and big businessmen, they saw potential in you and they encouraged you. And as I've been working on my own endeavors, it's been really, really amazing to feel that encouragement and to feel the potential to grow. So it's very cool that you've also had that experience. And I feel like that's something that really motivates a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Well, and for them too, it's also another reminder to me there, kind of a little segue there is that, they didn't realize kind of what that did for me in that moment. And one, I've actually tried several times to express it to him. It's Nick Greer, the CEO of Built Bar. And anyways, so that's just kind of a little add-on too, of like what they did for me in that moment was really cool. Yeah.
That's cool. All right, now taking a step back, right? You went to your class, you presented this idea, and you mentioned you found people to help you?
Yeah, I did. Yep. So found 4 others, I think it was. And we started working on it for the class. And then a couple of them, they, dropped out. They were mostly doing it for the class. And then we continued on with a couple of people.
That's cool. So did they become your co-founders, or how did that relationship work out?
Yeah, they did. Yep.
Wow. Very
cool.
Yeah.
And so one who's just awesome. And then another one, we've, since replaced him with someone else. He went off to play basketball in Europe. And so we, filled that position with someone else.
Interesting. So what was that experience like looking for co-founders? Did you have a certain skill set that you were lacking that you were looking for a co-founder to fill? What was that like?
Yeah, initially I just needed people. We needed other brains and other hands on this in order to get it going. Then as we've grown, of course, we've needed, specific help in certain areas. So we've, got someone on to do social media and someone else who has like a little bit of more of a real estate background, just things like that, a developer, just areas where we need more help.
Okay, that's really cool. How big is your team now?
Yeah, so our team is 4 people.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
So was it like the 4 people kind of in the beginning? I know you mentioned you replaced someone. Has it always been 4 people?
Mostly. I mean, it's kind of fluctuated between 3 and 5.
So you got your co-founders. After that, I feel like one of the biggest steps is like validating your business. What was that process like for you guys?
Yeah. So luckily we were in a really great entrepreneurial program. It's, Princeton Review has it ranked number 3 in the nation for entrepreneurship. And so they really gave us a lot of tools in order to know how to validate. So we learned several different methods. One thing that we did is we joined 27 different Facebook groups that related to the idea that we had in mind.
That's a lot of Facebook groups.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
yeah, we did. And so then we posted a poll to each of those, and it had 3 different ideas, and we asked them to rank their favorites and then, provide comments in the comment section. And so we had over 1,800 reactions from that.
Wait, 1,800?
Over 1,800.
Wow.
Yeah, people were commenting like crazy. It was great feedback for us.
Yeah, that's a great sign when you're trying to figure out if this is going to work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we started taking those comments to heart. By far the most popular, which is kind of the one we had in mind, but we didn't want to, we just wanted to see, right? By far the most popular was the Airbnb platform for event venues. And on a number of these groups, they talked about how they had tried to do this with Airbnb, and they had been shut down. Some people a day of, some people 3 or 4 days before their event. So before their wedding, before their bachelorette party or whatever. Because in 2021, Airbnb actually codified their event ban.
Oh, really?
And so this was very much like blue waters for us in order to be like, okay, well, if they don't have it, then we'll take this.
That's incredible.
So we did that validation. We also did over 60 interviews with people personally, and got some good feedback again from that. And then we just started running with it. And so we started contacting family and friends, kind of getting referrals from them. I occasionally would just go and look up an area in Utah that I wanted to have properties in. I just go drive out there and start door knocking. And got some good feedback as we talk with people about that. Very quickly the issue came up of what do you do about insurance? And I was like, oh, okay, we need to have insurance. And that was a great for validation as well.
Wow, that's really cool. So for beginner entrepreneurs or people that are starting their businesses, what would you recommend doing in their endeavors?
Yeah, I would say either look up online, or you can go and talk to someone who's been successful in entrepreneurship and ask them, or if you're, learning it in college or whatever, that's great. But get some knowledge of how to test your idea. And then as you go through the process, don't be afraid to change your baby. A lot of people are very attached because this is their brainchild, right? And you can continue to go that route, but it may just mean you put in a lot of effort, and then you realize in a year or 2 years, whatever it is, okay, we've put in this much effort, it really isn't what the market wants, right? And so then you've just spent a lot of time. So just be open-minded rather than save yourself that heartache, and just be open-minded and be willing to either change some things or to be able to pivot entirely.
That's really cool. I feel like that's one of the biggest benefits of being here at iHub is you have access to a community of entrepreneurs. There are so many mentors that are willing to help, and they can totally fulfill that role in your business.
Yeah.
How has iHub helped you as you've been building your business?
Yeah, so I have a little bit of a different relationship with iHub. I never signed the paperwork to any of the agreements for iHub or the amount of equity or whatever. Corbin called me one night and he said, hey, can you meet me at this address tonight? And I said, sure. And so we showed up here, and he gave me a tour of the place, and he asked me to manage the event space. And so that's what our agreement is. And as far as what iHub provides, I think I was told that there are 300 mentors or so. That's fantastic. I hope that people, and I think I can tap into that as well, are really taking advantage of those mentors. That's fabulous. I think that's probably, in addition to the working space and several other perks and benefits, but I think that's probably the greatest benefit that I've seen so far.
What have the mentors that you've been in contact with helped you the most in your business?
Yeah, I think provided a lot of support, given me strategies. I mentioned Nick Greer of Built Bar a little while ago, and I remember he at one point, right after we had started this was, several years ago, but when we had first were brainstorming this, and we had done really well in the competition, and I met with him at his office, and I was basically telling him my concerns and fears about it, and he was like, okay. And he just asked me, he's like, okay, and why not? Why not just do this, And I realized it really was that point blank. It's just, I just needed to decide if I was doing this or not. you know? And so just kind of provided me with like some clarity of thought, obviously given me strategies and ideas. You know, another one of his was like, just go. And he's like, just get as many properties as you can. He's like, and then you can filter them out as you need. But he's like, just having the supply for people will be really helpful for you. You know, another mentor that I have and putting me in touch with several people in order to talk about investing, and those connections have been awesome.
Very cool. Yeah. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced as you've started this business?
Yeah. So there's been legal issues. The website took a lot more time and energy than we anticipated. We learned that it's pretty complicated to build the kind of website with the features that we need. So it's this double-sided online marketplace, needs some very specific features. So we started off, and I just kind of found a couple of people at BYU and a couple of people at the U to help build this website. The work that they're doing is good. They just didn't have the skill set yet in order to build out what we needed. So then we went with an outside, like, local company, and they got us a little bit further, but still there were just things that we needed that they weren't able to fill. So we've probably gone through 4 or 5 different developers. We finally found one in the South who has done a great job and is really getting our website. It's at where we want it to be, and now we just need to put in a couple more features and put in some more of the properties.
Wow, that's very cool. How were you able to fund this project? It sounded like at the very beginning you were working with like a lot of volunteers, people that believed in your idea. Has that transferred? What are you doing now?
For funding
for funding your project. Like you talked about how building the website was a lot more difficult than you anticipated because there were more features that you needed that were more advanced. So it sounded like you needed more advanced developers. Did that cost you money? Were you able to do equity? How did you go about that?
Yeah, so that definitely cost us. That was friends and family who funded that.
That's awesome. It's nice when you get support from your friends and family. So it's cool that you were able to do that.
Yeah, thanks.
Man. And so you mentioned that you had some like legal difficulties that you ran into as well. Would you mind expounding on that?
Yeah, we did. So it turns out, of course, for every city, you need to be that you have a location in or locations in. You need to be on top of their noise ordinance laws, even if they allow, something like these short-term rentals for events. And so being on top of the code and the regulations for each city has been something that we've needed to keep track of. And that's mostly been it. Just other little things like having insurance for events, having insurance for certain places is something that we've navigated. And then there's been several times when I've been talking with a potential investor or something, and I kind of have this little worry that perhaps I'm being taken advantage of in the back of my head, because of my lack of legal expertise. And so I did a law internship this summer mostly for that reason, is I just wanted more legal know-how.
Yeah. So are you still in school then?
I know, I'm graduated.
You've graduated. Yep. Okay. But you went out and got this experience to help you continue your education in that way. Okay, so we've talked a lot about your business, how you've gotten to be where you are, kind of the strategies and some of the big problems that you've run into and how you've overcome them. I want to ask you now, like, your why behind what you're doing. Why are you still invested in this business?
Yeah. So I just got married 2.5 weeks ago.
Congrats.
Thank you so much.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, it is. And we've known each other for 3.5 years. We've been dating for 2. And I don't believe in soulmates. I think there's a lot of people that you could be compatible with as long as you share similar values and visions. But one of the things that continually attracted me to him is that we had a very similar vision for our life. He has a goal to, by the time he's 65, to donate $1 billion a year.
Wow.
And
that's a huge goal.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I remember, I think he told me that on our second date, and which was cool.
That's kind of like an intense question for a second date.
It was.
But hey, it worked out then.
We were creating vision boards for the day. I invited him over, and it just came up naturally, And I thought that was cool that he just told me about it. And I think he was just kind of seeing where I was at, in addition to that. And anyways, so that's a goal that we share together. And the whole purpose and motivation behind that is to build the kingdom of God. And so, money absolutely helps with that. and can do a lot in this world in order to motivate and to push forward that purpose. And so Yedding is one way in order to help us get there. And I'd like to run it as much as I can. I'd like to grow it into an international business. I have goals in order to mentor entrepreneurs in other countries. And so I have this like vision of sitting down with a lady in Africa. We're like beneath a tree and she's like sitting on a basket, and I have like one of my little girls who's like running away as I'm like talking with her, right? And I just like continually remind myself of that in order to get myself there. And so that's a huge why for me, because Yedding is a way that either we grow it and it becomes international, or at some point we sell it and we do something else. But in order to help us achieve our vision.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I feel like having a why behind it that is so like impact driven is so powerful, because it'll push you. It'll help you when you're really facing those difficulties. Mm-hmm. Man. So what is your long-term strategy with Yedding? I know you mentioned like you're not quite sure. In a perfect world, what would you want to happen with your company?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, we'd continue to expand. We'd become international in about 5 years. And then as it continues to grow, I'd like to be able to take the duties that I'm currently covering and be able to delegate those to other people more and more, so that I can focus on my vision behind this, which is, like I said, mentoring entrepreneurs in other countries. And so, yeah, in a perfect world, it would be international. We'd run a company. My husband would be a huge part of that, and of course other people that we bring on. And I'd be able to be doing more of that mentorship.
That's really cool. What have you done to start that process of being a mentor?
Yeah. So I've been able to travel to a couple of places and a few places and meet people and kind of, for example, I was in Thailand and we went and we were at a hotel, and I noticed that there was a brochure there to do cooking classes. And so I messaged him on WhatsApp, and it's this amazing 17-year-old kid who had just started, in addition to school, he had started going and doing cooking classes, even in the evenings and on weekends. And so he had started learning 1 or 2 things that he could make, and he would start, teaching people out of his parents' house how to make these. And then he's just like continually expanded his business. And he impressed me because it's not something that I've seen that's normal for a lot of these international entrepreneurs to have like such a clear direction about where he wants to go with his business. And so I just asked him point blank, several questions about where he intended to go. And he told me, and he's like, I want to be able to go and I want to travel in places like, he mentioned a few, I think France was one of them. He's like, and I want to be able to go into their homes and do these private cooking classes. And anyways, he really impressed me. He's still someone I have in the back of my mind, that at some point, I'll be able to help him more. And then a year ago, I was in Poland, and I speak Russian, and so I was there as an interpreter. And there it was for these 7 Ukrainian women who they started this. It was kind of like a multicultural center in Ukraine, but then the war started, and so they had to leave to Poland. And I helped start this nonprofit called Unity for Ukraine, and we were helping them throughout the year. And at the end of the year, we got to go. And we got to work with them for a couple of weeks. And so, they impressed me in several ways as well. I also saw a couple of like really serious, potentially, issues that they have, and a couple of things that they need to get resolved pretty quickly in case they, if they want to continue to grow. But that was an awesome experience working for them. And their charity and their kind hearts and being able to have that experience of sitting down with them like in a business meeting and helping to interpret for one of the investors who's American. Sure. And saying, okay, here's how you need to improve.
Wow. Yeah. That is really cool. How do you balance all these things that you're doing? Like, you have your own company, mm-hmm. You just got married, you're trying to be a mentor, you're involved with charities. How do you balance all that?
Yeah. I think it kind of comes in seasons. And so there's some times where I just I mean, I'm always trying to keep on top of Yedding, of course, and I'm always working towards it more. But for the last couple of months before I got married, it was, okay, let's keep Yedding, let's maintain it, right? And then we have to put a little bit more effort into wedding planning and put our heads a little bit more there. And so I think it's the whole, if you've ever heard like the spinning plate analogy,
Yeah.
and it's like
I was just thinking about that.
You just keep them, you just keep them from falling, right? And sometimes one's going to be lopsiding and one's going to be a little bit more precarious than the others, but you just keep them from falling.
Man,
Yeah.
what is your plan for like balancing your business and your relationship now that you're married?
Yeah. So something that I've already seen that's very important is having set times and being very like strict on, these like 2 hours before bed or like for my husband, right? I'm a really devout Christian, and so I absolutely am big on the Sabbath. I do not accept meetings. There's a lot of normal things I don't do. I don't know if you've heard of Charlie Kirk, but he goes and he's big, in the conservative movement, and he goes around to different college campuses, and at times he'll advise them if someone, talks about an issue with like depression or anxiety, which is a huge issue in our society. I've heard him say, before you take depression and anxiety meds, he said, observe the Sabbath. And for him, he like turns off his phone, which is, I'm not at that level, but I think it's an awesome idea. But I think being like super strict on that as well has already helped me, and I anticipate it'll continue to help me even more, to use that time in order to go to church, to spend with my husband, spend with, the people that mean the most to me.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's something that means a lot to me personally as well. I'm also a devout Christian, and keeping the Sabbath day is a very big priority to me. Like this summer, I turned down a couple opportunities because they were wonderful, but they were going to ask me to work on the Sabbath. And I was just like, nope, that's not what I want to do. And so for me, it's been fun in my entrepreneurial journey because you're the one in charge of your schedule. You get to make these decisions.
Yes.
Right? And sometimes you're going to have to really fight for it, and you have to make sacrifices. But if this means that much to you, you're in control.
Which is a huge pull for me, too. And that was something that was a huge motivator in order to get started as well. In that, I think that a lot of societal standards are declining. And for me to be able to, I worked at Qualtrics for a little while. I worked at a couple different places. And you occasionally come against that, where it's like, this is conflicting with your core values, and how do you reconcile that? And so it's very appealing for me to be able to run my own thing. And so I get to determine what my schedule is going to look like and how this aligns with my values.
That's cool. So how does your business reflect your personal values?
Yeah. So we have the whole purpose, our whole why, for growing. And that's, like I said, in order to build the kingdom of God. We have, mentorship and a little bit of that has already started taking place that'll continue to grow. Things like I determine my schedule. So I don't work on the Sabbath. I get to take time away, and I anticipate that'll be very important in the future because we want kids. That it's like I can make sure that that God and my family is my first priority and stays that way.
Yeah, wonderful. I love that. Well, Brenna, where can people go to learn more about you and your business?
Yeah, so they can go, our website is yedding.com, so they can look at that. That has a lot of our properties on it. We have, we're on Instagram, it's Yedding LLC, and so they can kind of browse more properties and ask questions there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Jacob.